He was a lovely doctor.
Okay, so what's her surname? Helen?
Essen. E-double-S-E-N.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Hope those of you that went away for a holiday over the summer had a nice time, all refreshed. It's a bit autumnal out there this evening. Could we start with apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillors Lisa Feenan-Cook and Councillor Skipper. Councillor McIntyre is hoping to join us later on, but sends her apologies if not.
Can I also just note that Councillor Whitcroft is also not in attendance. Well, she's virtually attending, but she's currently on holiday as well.
Thank you very much. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 18th of July 2023. Are we all happy with those? Yeah, agreed? Okay. Might have to borrow your pen again. Like last time as well.
I bought a spare. I anticipated it.
Very good. Okay. Declarations of interest, please, with respect to the agenda this evening.
None, Chair.
None? I guess it's maybe worth noting that I'm an observer on the Briars Management Committee, Briar Centre Management Committee, though, as I keep being reminded, I don't have a vote on anything there. So non-peculiary. Okay, which might pop up in one of the papers. Okay. So no declarations. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to item 4, questions by members. Any questions from the members? Thank you. Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you, Leader. This sort of covers a number of portfolios, really. I've been glad to see comments in recent meetings of all sides of the chamber agreeing with the great team of officers we have here at Surrey Heath. Also, as discussed at the most recent PNF, retention is key to continuing moving forward in the right direction. We've also discussed how key the town and all businesses within the borough are to the continued success of brand Surrey Heath. Bearing in mind these points, I understand an open letter has been published on your group's website regarding the council finances. As far as I can see, this has not been published anywhere officially by the council. There have also been a number of boosted social media posts from various members from your group. I also understand there have been quotes from yourself in various media outlets. Surely making inaccurate and unsubstantiated comments about being bankrupt within 2 to 3 years for the world to see will only harm brand Surrey Heath. Is it not true these comments will put off new businesses coming to Surrey Heath, as they will not want to invest in the borough? Also, these comments will have a negative effect on trying to employ new staff into key roles and, even more importantly, retaining staff within the great team we already have. If, on the other hand, all the comments could be substantiated, then surely this should not have been posted on just your social media outlets, where very limited numbers of the residents of Surrey Heath can see them, but there should be an official statement from Surrey Heath Borough Council. I know the new administration's watchword is transparency, so with that in mind, I'm sure we would all appreciate seeing the numbers that lead to the recent posts and comments by your group. Finally, in the last few days, I've spoken with a number of concerned residents with key businesses within the borough, for the record, none of whom are Tory supporters. They've all stated independently they are concerned with the recent posts and the fact it looks like this has been purely done to Tory bash for political gain and not for the good of Surrey Heath residents. I would appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Excellent, thank you. Perhaps on the point concerning publication of items on the council website, the monitoring officer could just give an update on our discussions concerning how that would be approached over the last week or so, or maybe even longer. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. So, concerning what was published on the council's website, what was published is acceptable and in accordance with the law. It was a post that simply announced the publication of documents. There were no comments or any further text in that post. So as far as I'm concerned, it was a compliant post by the... Okay.
The comment I made was not referring to what's been released into the public domain, because in fairness, a lot of that was already in the public domain. But what I'm not referring to is that. I'm referring to other social media posts that are not related to that at all, and the fact that in 2 to 3 years, Surrey Heath is going to be bankrupt. That's the point I'm referring to.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. You made a number of points in what you will, I think, accept was a fairly long question. So there are a couple of items there. You referred to inaccurate statements. We don't believe any of the statements that have been made are inaccurate. You also asked why those statements are not being made on the council website, and that was due to the fact that the monitoring officer advised that would be politicising the council, and that would be not appropriate. So therefore, that was why that was not done, because it's not compliant with the law. Hence, the referral I just made a minute ago to just get clarity from the monitoring officer that the statements we had made on the council website were compliant with the law. So the third point was around the businesses, and the impact of that on the residents as well. So we accept very much that it is a concerning time. We have inherited a very fragile position from the previous administration, of which you were part of and are familiar with the details, that showed that we would be using up our reserves over a number of years. The maximum that those would run through to is 3.5 years, and that's why there was a range within the document. Since then, we have had the truss effect, which has increased our borrowing payments, our interest payments, and also we've had the impact on inflation for our suppliers and obviously expectations of the staff. And therefore, that pulls forward the date at which we will run out of reserves or savings, in simple layperson's terms, by which we can fund this council. So, in line with good, prudent behaviour, we are looking ahead, we are seeing the challenges there, and we are being honest and transparent with the residents that we need to address these challenges, rather than hiding the facts. We do accept that that's a challenging time, but we have an opportunity to navigate a course through. And by doing that, we provide confidence and hope to the residents and the businesses that Camberley and the wider Surrey Heath remains a place that they can do business and live safely and in prosperity. Councillor White.
You just made the statement there that it wouldn't be appropriate to criticise the council on the council's website, but you obviously think it's appropriate to criticise the council on your political site.
Thank you, Councillor White. No, we weren't criticising the council. We were analysing the situation we were under, and we were criticising the decisions that have left this council with a huge amount of debt. As you will appreciate, there was a report last week in The Guardian that highlighted we are number 6 in terms of the debt that we're carrying as a proportion of our spending power. That is the facts that we are living with today. Those assets are not worth what they were, and that is the challenges we have to face. So we are not criticising the council and the staff, we were criticising the decisions that have left us in this situation. Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Leader.
you just said that the monitoring officer regarded the letter that you published on your website as political. There's no doubt that that will tarnish the reputation of the council somewhat and put off businesses. So do you think your choice of communication and political point scoring had the opportunity cost of the council's reputation, and do you think that this was the best way to handle this?
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Mears. I actually said that the monitoring officer made it clear that we would not be able to publish those sorts of things because it would politicise the council. That was the statement I made. We are not politically point scoring. We were elected on the basis that we be transparent. One could ask the question why 7 years after these purchases, the previous administration had not been transparent with the backgrounds to all these decisions. Councillor Cope, I think, was next. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. When I was at school learning maths, I was told to always show my working. It seems clear to me that the leader did not learn the same lesson when making these wild claims on council finances without backing up or showing any working at all. I feel he's made it impossible for councillors to scrutinise or challenge his claims. But luckily, just as at school, we can give him a second chance and resit. Will he commit to publishing his full workings for his claims about when the council may go bankrupt and any officer's advice he received prior to making those claims?
The workings that were used were in the footnote of the the independently issued statement that was made. That showed the impact over year on year of the higher interest rates as a function of Liz Truss's bankrupting this economy and also causing damage to this council. So the workings were there in the footnote of the statement that was made. I will reflect on the further points in his question and come back to him in due course. Councillor Garrett.
Just a matter of clarification, really. Reference the papers that were recently released. A lot of the papers that were released were also discussed in the P&F's independent review, which I was a member of, as was the leader of the opposition at the time, which were published at the P&F, I'm thinking back in 2020. So a lot of that information and papers were already in the public domain. So it's not as if they were suddenly coming out and it's been hidden. A lot of them came out, and obviously they were discussed within that meeting, just as a matter of clarification.
Was there a question there, Councillor Garrett? I missed it. Thank you. Councillor Mears.
Thank you. There have been quotes that could be considered commercially sensitive by Liberal Democrat representatives on social media, such as, "The council also can't borrow any more money to undertake the necessary renovations to make the former house at Fraser Building commercially viable," end quote. It's alarming that this is being published into the public domain, as the reports you've just published, out of transparency, relating to property purchases, highlights an issue around a lack of commercial competitiveness in purchases. Secondly, I've not been able to find any publicly published reports by this council to substantiate this claim. Could you please shed some light on where this information has come from, how these representatives gained it to be able to post it on social media, and whether you think that this commercially sensitive information should be shared widely on Facebook?
My apologies, I keep forgetting to press the button today. These things happen. I will reflect on his question in more detail and come back to him in due course. Thank you, Councillor Mears.
Just to come back on that, out of transparency, are you willing to let us share your responses to the public domain?
I will take guidance on that from the monitoring officer and we'll let them know. Thank you, Councillor Mears. Please, Councillor Mears.
Last one, I promise.
You take your time.
It was refreshing to see your email regarding the Farnborough Airport consultation that you're going to be launching and going to be researching within the council. Could you confirm whether you took similar action with the South Western Railway Ticket Office consultation and whether this administration responded to the consultation? Thank you.
That one allows me a break, so thank you, Councillor Mears, for that. Councillor Ashbury, will you please give an update on that?
We responded as a council through the South East Councils group, who collectively made a response to the South Western Railway consultation. Obviously, because that's a wider impact across more councils than just Surrey Heath. With the Farnborough Airport proposed expansion, we will be making a response as Surrey Heath Borough Council because it's a much more local issue.
Thank you. I don't think I've seen that, so would you mind sharing it when you have a moment? That'd be great, please, what that response was.
Yeah, I'll dig it out.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Any further questions? I'm not seeing any on there. Councillor Betton. Oh, yeah, it's hidden with his books, yeah. Councillor Betton, please.
Thank you, Leader. I have looked at the papers that have been published on the council's website. In fact, I've got them in front of me now. Excuse me. In the exempt report, there is some detail that refers to due diligence reports and detail that refers to the red book. I can't find those published. Why have not those details been published?
From my perspective, having read all these documents in some detail, as you might imagine, Councillor Betton, there are a number of ambiguities. There are a number of documents that are alluded to, annexes that are alluded to, that seem to have disappeared. I have been assured by the officers that they can find no record of those documents. I believe they have taken due diligence in making that attempt to find those documents. As I think you're aware, none of the current officer suite and many of the other at the next level down, senior officer suite and next level down, were around at the time that these purchases were made. And therefore, I believe in good faith they have been looked for and cannot be found. Where they have gone is a mystery to us all. So there are no further documents that we are aware of to be found. However, I think all the officers are aware of a deep interest of this administration and relevant other parties of these documents, including our residents. And should they come to light, then we will publish them in all transparency, notwithstanding the rightful comments that members of the opposition made around commercially sensitive information or other regulatory barriers to doing so. Is there anything you wish to add, Monitoring Officer?
Thank you, Chair. And no further comment from myself. I think we've carried out an extensive search from our part and not been able to find any documents in democratic services, at least.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Leader. I just wonder if, in view of the comments that you've just made, you might consider reviewing the Trust's retention policy, which retains council's documents for a maximum of 4 years. Having challenged that myself recently, I'm told that it's council policy and it's not renewable. It's not reviewable. Had there been a councillor retention policy that went back more than 4 years, then I'm sure we would have been able to lay our hands upon the documents to which you refer.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. As you may have just spotted, I took some guidance there. So it's a very fair question, and what we'll do is we'll reflect on it. I think the specifics of this case is those documents were not part of any public meeting, and therefore the same regulatory requirements for document storage don't necessarily apply. But we will reflect on that and see whether we can make any adjustments to the policy that would be appropriate. Thank you for your question.
There would have been emails, I'm sure.
Yeah, we also discussed that. I didn't refer to that previously, but we did discuss an email trawl, and that was ruled out on the grounds that those also get deleted after people leave for a period of time. Okay. If I don't see, right, so apparently we're out of time, we're out of questions, so thank you very much everybody for those. We're going to do a little bit of rejigging of the agenda, so please bear with me. And the reason for that is for efficiency of people's time, particularly as you may spot our emergency services. So we're going to start with agenda item number 11. Now, Councillor Whitcroft is on holiday, although joining us virtually, which is very kind of her. This shouldn't be a new topic and I will take the lead, sorry that I didn't clarify that. So this shouldn't be a new topic to anybody, and obviously you'll have read through the papers. This is the third time that this has come to this group for looking at. I think there's been one addition of a playground to the mix, but otherwise it stays very much the same. The consultation process had a number of respondents. Probably the most important one was Surrey Police, who endorsed the approach that we currently have in place as a useful tool to manage low-level antisocial behaviour. And therefore, without further ado, I will open it up for any questions or comments people want to make before the executive come to a conclusion. Yes, Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. It's I know I have raised this one to you before. It's just regarding on page 112, the alcohol control zone for Southwell Park Road to Surrey Avenue. I'm still unsure of the reasoning behind this specific one and the location that it covers. So I would be appreciative if there was just some kind of further explanation on the reasoning behind including this one. The other areas which are kind of specific to roads cover town centre locations, and this one seems to cover a residential area. So I'm just wondering if there's any information with regards to that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Just to confirm, this is page 112, which titled, there is quite a lot of maps on this thing, as you might appreciate, that's titled Southwell Park Road to Surrey Avenue. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, would the relevant officer like to comment?
What's this one? So, historically, what we found is that in the town centre, at weekends normally, we have people who like to participate in some alcohol, and basically as they walk home, this is quite a well-known route for them to take, and it just means that this particular route we're able to try and stop any either low-level antisocial behaviour, vandalism, or any other antisocial behaviour, and that's why it's there, for no other reason than that.
Thank you, Mrs. Baldwin.
Thank you very much. You just need to press. Marvellous. Thank you. Very good. Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you, Leader. My question was related to the town, and it relates to something that happened recently, and it's an area of guidance, really. At the car show a few months ago, there was an issue where there were residents that were travelling from Ascot walking through the high street with bottles of wine, bottles of lager, etc. in their hands, that happened to be a very busy day for the police, and it was very difficult that day, and I appreciate that because they were in Woking. But we had the police come along. But the issue was there's no signs anywhere saying you can't walk through the streets with alcohol. Is that something we can do? Is that something we should do? It's just that when someone says to me, well, why do we have to? There's a sign up there saying you shouldn't do it. Just that, and it's related to this, so I just wondered if that's some guidance on that, if that's something we can do. Thank you.
Any comments?
Sorry, apologies. Just a little bit of discussion. So, in effect, the PSPO is built upon evidence of complaints that we receive, and that's the whole basis of it, and it's done in consultation. So it's living and learning a little bit. If we were aware of that, then perhaps we could do something about it. But there is other legislation that we can use to actually deal with that, opposed to putting a blanket coverage in. If we know that that may be an issue on that particular weekend through that event, there may be something that we could do to mitigate that risk. So opposed to actually imposing something that takes away a perceived liberty for a one-off event, you would look at it from a different piece of legislation. But thank you for making us aware of it, because we can now try and have a look at it from another perspective.
Okay, any other questions from anybody? No, oh, thanks. Oh, Councillor Wheeler, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. My question relates to the requirement for dogs to be kept on a lead during the bird nesting season, which, although I'm fully supportive of it, my fear is that that will drive users onto our common land, where the instructions are guidance as opposed to something which is legally binding. And I just wondered what consultation had been done with Natural England, Surrey Wildlife Trust and County Council to ensure that protecting one area doesn't actually have a severe and adverse effect on another area.
Any comments on that? Were they part of the consultation group?
So we did send consultation invitations to Surrey County Council. I admit we haven't sent anything to Natural England, but obviously we would be happy to get feedback from them if necessary. In effect, this request actually has come from our own sort of internal green space team, where they wanted to actually protect the birds, and we've just retained it as is. But obviously, if there is a gap, then we're happy to look at it, to double check with it, and we can certainly put things into the operational strategy to ensure that the risk is mitigated.
I certainly am very concerned. If there are a lot of people that will not want to have their dogs on a lead, and obviously the SSI is a SSI for a reason. I think we've already introduced car parking charges, which has moved people from our sangs to the common, and now we're introducing something else which is likely to have a further impact on it.
Okay, may I respond? Perhaps it's something I can pick up with you offline, Councillor Wheeler, to ensure that we go ahead with your support.
Thank you, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
I think possibly more generally, the point that Councillor Wheeler makes needs to be considered, because it's not just obviously the SSIs in Chobham we need to be thinking about, it's the other areas that we want to protect as well. So I think it's a great question. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler, and we'll take it as an action to ponder how we don't move the problem on somewhere else. Thank you.
Sure, is it attached? Thank you. It's really just to put across a policing point of view with regards to the PSPO. It's a piece of kit essentially that allows for the council or the police to tackle low-level offending and behaviour that could be considered as antisocial. It doesn't have to be used, it's just there to be an option, and there is a whole raft of legislation that could tackle attacks on dogs or antisocial drinking, drunken disorderly behaviour. So it's really just to say what we are looking at here is an option to be used, doesn't have to be used, but really targets those areas where we believe that this kind of behaviour is most likely to happen or represents as the significant risk in these particular areas. Obviously, dogs legislation is a particularly prevalent issue at this time, and one that I think it would be important that the council and the police seem to take a position on. And I did a review of reports that we've had, and there were 65 over the last year of dog-related incidents involving attacks on dogs or humans being involved in that. So it is an issue, and I think it's an important piece of legislation that should be considered to be in place as we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, if there aren't any further comments, the Executive's advised to resolve that the Public Space Protection Order as set out in Annex A to this report is retained without change for a further 3-year period until the 14th of October 2026. Are we agreed? Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 12, which is the off-street car parking service. Sorry for jumping around a little bit. We were just doing it for the efficiency of relevant staff. I think this one's back with me again in Councillor Whitcroft's absence. So as I think a number of people are aware, we had planned to do an increase and put that forward in the base budget review, which was here July, I think, from memory. Having looked at that in more detail and got some data, we see that we have more time than we expected maybe to do the strategy work that was mentioned at that time, and I think in this chamber. And so the plan is to take a bit of a pause and do that strategy work before we come forward again with any plans for car parking in the existing locations and, as the report states, in potentially other locations. So is there any questions or comments on that one? Councillor Quinn, please.
Yeah, so I do have to ask the Executive to reconsider some parts of this report. I understand the desire to pause increasing in car parking charges for maybe the villages, but this council needs all the revenue it can get. And a 5% increase, let's say, for Main Square and Knoll Road would be a below inflationary increase, and it would generate funds to allow the council to pay down its debt and potentially support projects such as the Youth Council, and I know the council are very keen to support work on that. So I really can't understand why, given the state of the council's finances, we're not increasing car parking charges, at least for the major car parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. So we're actually seeing activity levels higher than we expected, higher than we budgeted for. So that allows us that breathing space to look more holistically at what is the strategy. As I think a number of people in this room will appreciate, we inherited a position where there wasn't a car parking strategy, more holistic one. And I think it's important that we look at what are the investment requirements we have across the portfolio of car parks. What does the data show us in terms of the usage, certain times of day, days of the week, who's using those car parks, what their expectations are, and that if we are making the case for change, we make it with that information in our back pocket. We make informed, data-driven decisions. So at this point in time, we will take the pause and think it through more fully. Yes, Councillor Quinn.
Yes, you can still have a review while not reversing the decision made by the Executive previously, though. That's why I'd suggest it would be a sensible decision to pause the increases for the villages while the main car parks in Camberley could continue to generate more revenue for the council.
Point noted. Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Tedder.
Thank you. I would ask you to carefully consider Chobham. I know I would, I'm a councillor. But we have the point that the car park in Chobham it serves the Sangs. So anybody using the Sangs has got to pay a car parking charge. It is the only Sangs where you've got to pay a car parking charge. And it is sending people from the car park onto the common, which defeats the object of the Sangs. We also are a village, and there are things that go on Saturdays that people don't want to come and play their cricket because of the parking charges. We can't get volunteers because they're willing to give their time, but they're not willing to pay the car park charges. and it's making life very difficult. So I would ask you to look at that as well, because whilst I support we have to raise money, there are lots of things we've got to support, and I accept all that. But there are quite a few special circumstances in Chobham. Well, I would say that, but there are quite a few exceptional circumstances, and I would ask you to take them on board when you're looking at the whole issue.
We're very happy to have some great facilities in Chobham and other locations, and we'll certainly look at it holistically. Thank you for your feedback, Councillor Tedder. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Leader. I'm sure that people in town will love the fact that it's been suggested that they don't get prices increased in villages, but the town should be increased. And I would argue that the town also needs prices not to be increased right now. Forgetting the fact that we're obviously in this dire state and we need to get as much money in as we possibly can. The fact that we previously increased the prices and we said we would re-look at it at the beginning of the new term. I was also told in this chamber by the then leader of the opposition that we shouldn't be increasing prices to the town. In fact, the town should be the one we give free parking to. So I would argue, actually, that we should look at the town and not increase prices. If we want people to come into the town, then I think we need to not put them off by increasing prices again. So I'm glad to see that you're pausing your report. And obviously, I'm assuming this will take into consideration the new costs for any new equipment that's needed as well, which obviously I know is a different area, but is obviously still related to this. I would like it to be paused as long as possible, because obviously then at least we get more people coming into town. So not really a question, just really I'm glad it's been paused, and hopefully this is something that can be paused for a little bit longer.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I think from memory the report says that we'll make sure it comes back to P&F so that we can get, before it comes back to the executive, so we can get some good scrutiny done there and some insights from the relevant parties. We've also put the challenge to the officers to go away and look at what is best practice in other parts of the country and see what we can learn, so that we can get that fine balancing act between paying for these car parks, which need investment, but also making sure that we have places that people want to visit, whether it be for, as Councillor Tedder says, for recreational reasons or visits to the villages, or indeed for visits to our excellent independent shops in the High Street. Thank you. Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a point with regards to the previous increases. And as Councillor Garrett will remember, I was one of the ones who called in the decision at the time, primarily because there was no consultation with regards to the increase at that time. So I'm very pleased that we're actually making a commitment to the car parking strategy, and then hopefully consulting with the residents. I'll also point out that actually while the previous leader of the opposition in the last term may have made that comment, that was a singular comment, and other councillors will remember that there was wide support for the increase of the car parking charges within the town centre locations at that time. So I think I understand what the leader of the opposition right now is trying to do. I think it's a bit disingenuous. I just want to make sure that you just put it on the record that when the decision was called in at the last time, it was because of primarily from my side, a lack of consultation, and it was put through by the previous administration wholesale. So I'm very glad that we're moving forward with a proper strategy, a thought-out strategy that will address the wider holistic needs, car parking needs across the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. Councillor Garrett.
Just a very quick question then. So do I assume that this pausing of this paper means we'll be consulting with all wards before we increase prices, which is what you were suggesting we did last time?
I'm not sure the paper makes that commitment, Councillor Garrett. I think it makes a commitment to consult. We'll work through what the most cost-effective way of doing that is, because obviously consulting with each and every car owner in Surrey Heath is a little bit financially challenging for us, but we'll certainly try and make it as accessible as possible and see what it yields, yeah? Okay. Nothing on the screens? Okay, so I think we are asked to resolve that. The Executive's advised to resolve that the Council does not proceed with the original tariff proposal, including the base budget review report considered by Executive in July 2023. an overall parking strategy and action plan be developed for consideration by the executive and for implementation in the new financial year, and the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee be asked for their input and feedback on the draft parking strategy and action plan ahead of formal consideration by the executive. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll now move back up the agenda, you'll be pleased to know, to item 6. I'm still holding out the hope that Councillor McIntyre may be able to join us if we're lucky later. She was tied up in the city, unfortunately. So that's why I'm deferring the Treasury Management Report, for those of you that are curious. But we'll move on to item 6, which is the energy strategy. I guess this is you, Councillor Rice.
It
the
is.
rest for me, thank goodness for that.
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah,
you can
thanks.
have a glass of water. So, energy strategy summary. As I'm pretty sure everyone in this chamber all agree that Surrey Heath is one of the best places to live in the country. We have a beautiful countryside, we have very good and excellent civic amenities, and a town centre which gives the council the opportunity to grow prosperity and improve the quality of life for people across the borough. However, in common with nearly everyone across the UK, there's been an increase in the costs of energy since 2022, which and across 2022 presented a fiscal shock to Surrey Heath Borough Council, as it did to everyone else. UK energy prices rose significantly over the course of 2022, and while they have significantly fallen, they're still roughly 50% higher than before the Ukraine war. As the world economy transitions away from carbon-based fuels and the UK becomes more reliant on electricity as a source of power, predicting the future of energy becomes more difficult and may lead to further price shocks in the future. And as the council will, as the executive will know, in 2019 the council passed a climate emergency motion which pledged Surrey Heath Borough Council to be net zero by 2030. And that was further committed to within the 5-year plan, committing to reducing carbon emissions by 70% by 2027. And a key priority of this new administration is the speeding up of our net zero strategy. Within the report, I'm not going to go through the whole report, but the key details within the strategy are decarbonisation of buildings that will require large capital resources and officer time, with a total works of around £2.7 million, which have already been identified. If these works were completed, it would reduce Surrey Heath Borough Council's emissions that it is directly responsible for by 35%, which amounts to savings and income of £324,000 per annum at current energy prices. Surrey Heath House and Camberley Theatre account for 50% of the total building emissions, and as such, achieving net zero will be determined by our future plans for action at these sites. And some of the key actions within the strategy are to reduce energy use through changes to day-to-day operations in council buildings, including working alongside contractors and other stakeholders to reduce energy use, to ensure that all buildings are on the best value for money tariffs, the identification of the largest energy-consuming buildings, creation of costed decarbonisation plans for selected buildings, and the submission of capital bids, and to review information and information channels aimed at informing residents about energy saving. I do want to also add in my thanks to the Climate Change Working Group, both the previous term and this term, that have contributed to this, and I'm very happy to recommend this report to the Executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Any questions or comments from anybody? Yes, Councillor Mears, please.
Thank you. Like you mentioned, these works are worth £2.7 million. I worked that out with the numbers that you said to be about an 8-year payback. I'm going to quote your group here, I hope that's all right, that the council could be in an existential crisis. Is £2.7 million worth spending right now when that could be used to pay back interest or debts?
Well, with any financial commitment that is made by a council, it has to go through the budgetary process. So I would have to make the case to the rest of the executive, as would all other services. And it's a hard decision that we have to make when it comes to the finances, as the leader has set out. However, I would point out that by delivering on these capital projects, it will then result in reductions of energy costs over a longer period of time, So yes, there will be a payback period, but if we are able to increase the energy efficiency and reduce the building emissions of the theatre, for example, over a long period, there are no plans to get the theatre. The theatre will stand for a very long time. It will eventually lead to a better cost benefit in the long term, which will then reduce the impact on the council's finances. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, glad to hear the theatre's staying, and it was more of a can it wait question with the mounting pressure that you talk about, but I appreciate your answer. Thank you for getting back to me.
I'm just happy to come back on that. In my opinion, it's a question of political priorities. At times, I would say transitioning this council to a net zero footing has to be a priority, not only for our target to be carbon neutral and net zero by 2030. I would say it's a priority that we can't avoid, because, for example, if we look at the buildings that we are currently own and operate in, they are out of date and they are energy inefficient. So as that period goes on, the energy inefficiency of those buildings continues, and we will be continually hit by higher energy costs if energy costs don't come down. So I do understand your question. I would say, personally, as the portfolio holder, I don't think it can wait. I think it's a priority that we have to address right now. But, as I said, it has to be, I have to make that argument with the budget process for further funding. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe if I could add to that, Councillor Mears. Thank you, colleagues, for waiting. If I could just add to that, so I agree with Councillor Rise, and I agree with, I think, the basis of your point, which is we are in a climate crisis here, and we need to find the funds to do these types of projects. Now, we're coming on to a paper later where you can see that we are trying to prime the pump in this particular area with funding, and we will also, using the officers, look to see if we can get grants for various things in the climate change area. We've all seen the incredibly unseasonal weather we've had this year, the impact it's having on flash flooding in places like Chobham, Bisley, West End, even in Lightwater in certain places and other places in the borough. So we do need to take action, and if only for our children and our grandchildren. It may be, we can't let it be too late. So yes, we'll get after this, and it will be one of our key priorities of this administration. And I very much hope, in line with the work done so far within the working group, it can be on an all-party basis. But thanks for the question. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Leader. Actually, mine refers to 1.51, and I'm glad to hear that the theatre's not going anywhere anytime soon. But it just really referenced will be determined by the council's future plans for these sites, removal from the building stock or moving to energy efficient premises. There's only two buildings mentioned there, Surrey Heath House and Camberley Theatre. Well, if the Camberley Theatre is staying, and I'm assuming not moving, that obviously only leaves Surrey Heath House. So I'd just like some clarity on the timescales on that particular point to see how it fits into the whole scheme of things, assuming that means removing stock and not move. I mean, it could mean moving to efficient premises as well.
Councillor Rise.
Thank you. Yes, obviously, as we all know, the long-term future of Surrey Heath House is not. There are plans to move to move on from here eventually. So that puts it puts restrictions on what we're able to actually deliver on Surrey Heath House. For example, you would ask, why don't we just put a load of solar panels on top of Surrey Heath House? We've looked at it, but the fact is, if, as Councillor Mears set out of the payback period, most likely we would have probably been moving out of Surrey Heath House, but before we've paid it off, so it would not be cost effective. So we're looking at how else we can improve Surrey Heath House internally. So as we said, it's it's making sure we're on the best tariffs, going to the best provider of energy, having more energy efficient light bulbs, for example, which have already delivered throughout Surrey Heath House. When Surrey Heath moves, that's not I can't answer that question. It's not under my responsibility. But we would be looking, any building that we would move to, I would be ensuring that the property we move to would be energy efficient, that would have a long-term future in terms of energy efficiency, hopefully with capital investment with regard to solar panels. I think, does that answer your question? The reality of Surrey Heath House future means we can't do a lot on Surrey Heath House.
So that portfolio is under me. And obviously, Councillor Garrett, you're part of those conversations. So yeah, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense to invest in energy efficiency in this building if we know that we wish to move on. The position of myself and the officers is that if we can find a way to get out of this building, and obviously we have to bring it back for relevant approvals of all the parties here, then we would look to do so, and that could then accelerate the net zero impact, and it could obviously create opportunities to deal with our chronic housing issue that we also have in the borough. So these things are mutually supportive if we can try and get the puzzle right. Yeah, solve the puzzle. Thank you. I noticed that, or I did notice there are several hands up, but one's gone down. So, Councillor Wheeler.
Oh. Sorry, thank you, Leader. I'm just trying to get my camera back on. I just wanted to refer to page 33, where we talk about encouraging house builders to build in an energy efficient way. I just wondered what changes we're intending to make to the local plan to enforce and strengthen the policies that are already there, and how this council tends to balance that requirement against the housing targets, given that there is an increased building cost with energy efficiency. And then my next question relates to the next point, where we are receiving quarterly updates from Action Surrey. I don't see that as an action. We're tracking initiatives. We don't say that we are supporting initiatives or putting investment into initiatives or actually even holding anyone to account. We're just tracking it and receiving a report. So I would be interested to know how the leader feels that he can make that statement, turn that statement into some form of action that may actually be measurable. Thank you.
Apologies, Councillor Wheeler, to talk to myself as usual. I'll take the first one, maybe Councillor Rise, Councillor Ashby can maybe take the second one. As far as I understand, the local planning working group has been discussing how to get relevant measures into the planning guidance to make sure that we do build more increasingly energy efficient buildings. So that hopefully will address those items. And I think, as we all know, that whilst the capital costs can sometimes be higher to integrate these things in, there is healthy paybacks there. So hopefully that can be achieved. In terms of your second piece around action, Councillor Ashby wishes to add to that. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, just wanted to point out that at the last local plan working group, we spent the entire meeting reviewing our biodiversity and environmental policies with a view to bringing them in line and strengthening what we're trying to do. And that, again, is a very collaborative cross-party working group that all agreed with those changes to the policies, which will now feed into the local plan.
I'm sorry, I was there. I don't remember any great changes in those policies, which was the point I was trying to make. So rather than it being an initiative, it's just a continuation.
Councillor Ashby, any response?
Okay, I'll take that on. There were a number of changes that were agreed in there. If we want to take those even further, I'm happy to discuss that further at the next local plan working group.
Thanks very much. And in terms of the Action Surrey, Councillor Rise?
I'm being asked how can we strengthen that. I will have to take that away and discuss with the Climate Change Officer and other officers. We do actively promote initiatives that come into the council. For example, Solar Together, which we actively promoted, and that there was a 25% increase based on the previous phase of take-up of that scheme, which was very good. So that is what that, as I understand, is what that is referring to. But I take the point, Councillor Whelan, and I'll take that away and discuss with officers to see how we can strengthen that action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more? No. Okay, that's great. So we are asked to do what? The executive is advised to resolve the energy strategy as set out in Annex A to this report be adopted. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you to Cameron Dent for coordinating, pulling that together with the climate change working group. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to item 7, litter bin replacement programme, which I guess is you, Councillor Rise.
It is. Thank you very much, Leader. I'm very pleased this report is coming forward, and I want to thank Councillor Skipper for the work he's contributed to this as well. It's a joint report across 2 portfolio holder areas. I'd also like to thank Sue McCubbin and Agogo Atta as well for their work on putting this report together. So littering is always an emotive subject, and one that every ward member will be very aware of, whether that's the bins overflowing, fly tipping or littering. It's our ambition to improve the bin provision across Surrey Heath and introduce recycling into the town and village centres. JWS and the Green Spaces team have undertaken a thorough review of the bins and have made recommendations laid out in the report to remove and replace open-top bins and dog poo bins, and to introduce dual-stream recycling bins, which will increase the borough's recycling rates. This project has been driven by our short-term plan, which we announced earlier this year, to provide an accessible and comprehensive register of litter bins with details of ownership, condition and the emptying responsible party across the borough, and to review the location of litter bins and frequency of emptying to ensure better match with residents' needs and reported problems. So I'm just going to go through a few facts and figures from the report. So across Surrey Heath, of Surrey Heath public bins, there are 916 bins, which is split between the responsibility of JWS, which is 507, and 409 under the Green Spaces team. The dog poo bin waste capacity as is up to 40 litres. The old style bell top wooden slat bins are up to 60 litres, and the bins and the other bins that we have, the Glasden Plaza waste bins, they have a capacity of 100 litres, and those. So we are proposing to remove all dog poo bins, and the reasoning behind this is because under current legislation, dog poo no longer needs to be disposed of within its own waste stream. It can be disposed of in general waste stream. So we're looking to remove the dog poo waste bins and replace and the old style bell top bins with the Glasden Plaza waste bins. So across our bin infrastructure, we'll be seeing at least a 40% increase, a 40 litre increase of capacity, and where there are dog poo bins, there will be a 60 litre increase. In our town centre location and in other secondary retail areas, we are proposing the dual waste bins, as many will know, which will have a 200 litre capacity. This bin project will create 17,000 litres of additional waste capacity across the borough. All ward bins are mapped on the GIS and can be viewed ward by ward. The intention is to, as I've said, to replace old style bins and dog waste bins with our standard Glasden Plaza bin. Dog poo bins that are co-located next to standard bins will be removed. Ward councillors will be able to provide input into this project, which is something I've asked for, so they'll be able to see the bins in their ward and the impact that the changes will make to the bin provision within their wards. Where dog bins are to replace by a Glasden Plaza bin, these will be placed in the same location. However, there will be opportunities to reposition bins in an alternative location, agreed in consultation with the ward members and myself and Councillor Skipper as the portfolio holders. I appreciate that there are going to be questions about where will residents put dog poo. So dog waste, as I said earlier, no longer needs to be separated and can be included in general waste bins. as a part of this rollout of this new bin replacement programme, we'll be running a campaign to raise awareness of this fact. All of the new bins will be stickered with the campaign of Any Bin Will Do, and we'll also be including that with further communications works from the council as well. I'm just going to... Bear with me 1 second. I think that is... I just want to stress in terms of the consultation with wards. I really wanted to make sure that ward members had a chance to engage with officers over the bin placement. Bins are, as I said at the beginning, bins can be a very emotive issue for our residents when they're overflowing or their residents think they're not in the right place. So with the scheme that we're currently looking to do with the rollout in 2024-25, it will give ward members a proper amount of time to discuss with me and with Councillor Skipper and with officers where those bins can be, where potentially they could move to. However, I do want to stress that this is not a we need a new bin in this location scheme. It's a kind of a replacement and potential relocation scheme. This consultation, we will be rolling that out directly with ward members as well if this is successful this evening. I'm happy to take any questions on that. I could probably keep talking, but I do want to I'll take questions.
I'm going to sneak in with one of my own first. Thank you for your patience. Looking at the timeline, I don't see that consultation step in there. Perhaps you could give a comment as to when the relevant ward councillors will actually be consulted. And in a multi-member ward, how's that process going to work? Thank you.
I don't think we have a date yet. The addition was a relatively late addition into the strategy, and it was facilitated by our decision to change the funding stream for this away from community infrastructure levy to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It provided us with more capacity for time. I'll have to discuss with officers on when that will come. In terms of multi-member wards, my intention would be it would be a meeting of all ward members at a point. So it wouldn't be a meeting with one ward member with another. It would be each ward would have a meeting with me and the officers.
Very good, thank you. Sorry for sneaking in there first. Councillor Quinn, I'll go around that way.
So I've noticed there's a dual bin plan for being placed outside of Surrey Heath House, and we were talking in the earlier conversation about the future plans for this building. And in case the land that Surrey Heath House is on is redeveloped, should the location of that bin obviously be considered in light of that? Thank you.
I'm assuming are you referring to the figure 4 map on page 45?
Yeah.
So that's the existing bins. I would make the claim that Knoll Road is still within the town centre location.
So it says the map includes 2 dual bins already installed on Park Street, but 12 more dual bins are proposed. So I think that is a proposed bin. But
my apologies. Okay, fine. I would still argue that the Knoll Road area is a key part of the town centre, despite if this is where the council is or if it's potential residential development. This is a key walkway from Aldine Ward into the town centre. There's a theatre on Knoll Road, there's the library, there's the park behind the council buildings. I would say it's a key area of activity, and it would make sense to retain a dual waste bin there.
Maybe just to add, Councillor Quinn, from the discussions I've been involved with, I think we have the ability to move these. So, for example, as we see trade moving around different parts of the borough, we have the opportunity of tweaking it a little bit. There is a transactional cost, but if that's the right thing to do, we can do it. Because these bins, I think, have 20-year life from the information I was made available. Okay, Councillor White, please. Thank you.
There's 2 things. Bearing in mind that Bagshot Village Centre and Windlesham Village Centre are conservation areas, and Chobham, I've just been told. The dual bins look a bit garish to be put into that or those locations. Would it be considered that if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it, with the litter bins that we've already got in the village, that some of them are not that old, and in general, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it, you're replacing litter bins that are perfectly okay?
I take the point. I think that would be a very key part of the ward consultation programme that you've raised it to me now, and I'll make sure, and I will actually pass over to the officer to ask to see if she has an answer to that question. But that would be something I would be very keen for the ward members to make clear to me. I come from a part of the borough that is not a conservation area, so my day-to-day kind of experience with that is very limited. I'm just going to hand over to Ms McCubbin if she has anything further to add.
Not much further to add, but I think as part of the consultation process, we absolutely need to consider what's the right fit for everybody. I think in the village centres, it's very much about introducing recycling, which is why it was a dual waste stream being proposed. But absolutely, if it's not suitable, it's not appropriate, then that is certainly something that can be discussed.
Thank you, Ms McCubbin. Councillor Tedder.
Can we please ensure that all the bins, we actually own them? And if we don't own them, can we make sure that they're emptied? Because I know of 3 in Chobham, and one has spent, my chairman of the parish council myself, have spent about 2 years trying to get that one emptied. It belongs to the housing association, not Accent, Vivid. And there's 2 others that were put there by the borough, and then over the years, because you've changed the bin emptying bin, get forgotten, and then they get to overflowing. So can we make sure that when we go round, that these bins are identified and ownership is placed on them?
Yes, that process is already being undertaken by officers in terms of mapping all of the bins across the borough, who owns, who is responsible for collecting and emptying. I would say if there are bins that are not being emptied, please let me know, and I can make sure officers follow up with that. I have done that for others, so I'm happy to do that for any member. I will point out, if they are not the responsibility of Surrey Heath Borough Council, if they're not JWS bins or Amy or green space bins, they are not included in this programme of replacement, because this is only on the bins that we directly own. We are going to be engaging in consultation with all of our partners, including parish councils, housing associations, the Surrey Wildlife Trust, etc., to see if they wish to come on board with this programme, because there would be better hopefully cost effectiveness for them. I would be very keen to know more about this very specific. If you could get in contact with me about this one, I'd like to explore that one further.
I'll let you have all 3 of them.
You just let me know their location?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd be happy to use the strength of the council to support getting bins emptied that are not our responsibility, but somebody else's too. Yeah, no problem. Yes, Councillor Cope, please.
Thanks. The leader sort of partially referenced this, but could you just confirm that the life cycle of these bins is indeed 20 years, and therefore, on my reading, this sort of washes its face because you make the saving of £8,000 per year were you to have to use the SIL funding if you couldn't use the it's called Prosperity Fund funding?
I'm just going to pass to Ms McCubbin for the technical response.
No problem whatsoever. Thank you, Councillor Rice. Absolutely, yes. That is the anticipated life of the bin. However, vandalism does happen. So generally speaking, I mean, the wooden bins that we're looking to replace, some of those are in excess of 40 years old. So it is a mixed match. But yeah, I would expect the bins to last 20 years.
Councillor Mears, thank you.
Thank you. This question is about the dual stream bins. Is there an additional cost of processing the dual streams, or is it the same cost as emptying a normal general waste bin?
My understanding is that there's no additional cost because we already have some dual waste bins, so the cost of emptying can be subsumed within the current contract. Mr. McCubbin, am I correct on that?
Correct.
think that's almost a full house over there. Councillor Garrett.
We're playing bingo. My question actually alludes to what Councillor Tedder had said. I think my biggest issue and my biggest complaint from residents is not the size of the bin, not where the bin is. Please, will you empty it? And I think they'll probably say, we'd rather you spend the money on getting the damn things empty than putting more in not to be empty. Now, I know they're being mapped, and I know we've both had a discussion about that wonderful one on Upper College Ride that's been mapped and is owned by Amy, and one is... So I get all of those issues, but how can we make sure the residents are aware the reason we're doing this? Obviously, the messaging needs to be right, because the biggest key is they need to be empty.
With the replacement programme, it will actually rationalise the locations of the bins, so it will be I would hope, a much more clearer responsibility for emptying. In August, for example, I've been shown data that, because obviously with the stickers, and in August there were 194 green space bin reports across all locations. However, while we would say that's not good, it actually provided us with the intelligence to identify the areas where bins were overflowing, were not being emptied correctly. So we were then able to put extra resources. Well, Glendale hired a further bin operative, and that then has seen a significant drop. And I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in. Since August, there's been only reported 6. I realise we're not at the end of September, but there's been a significant drop in the reporting. What is really important is that we have the comms in place, as you mentioned, the comms in place, the stickers in all of our bins, so residents are able to report it. When they report it's effective, it then leads to it being emptied. I agree with you, residents want to see the bins emptied. The replacement bins, it will have a higher capacity, so the bins may not become as overflowing as quickly. But it is about that rationalisation of where the bins are to ensure that we have the right routes in place for them to be emptied.
Thank you very much. Councillor Betton.
Thank you. It's a simple question, really. How many bins have we got now? And after the rationalisation process, how many do you imagine a guesstimate will do that we will have to be emptied in the future? Because the fewer, but the bigger, as you say, will have not to be emptied so often, but the chances are that they can be emptied more efficiently.
Councillor Betton, unless I'm missing something, I think the answer to your first question is in the cover table. It's about 500 bins from looking at it, unless Ms. McGovern,
so in total there's 916 bins currently.
916.
Which covers 507 under JWS and 409 under green spaces. We don't have a final figure of how many we're going to have at the end, because of the rationalisation process, the consultation with ward members, etc., which which will likely lead to a reduction. Obviously, where there are dog poo bins placed next to general waste bins, there's going to be a reduction in provision there. So I can't say for certain, but there's likely to be a reduction. I've just been informed by officers there's going to be a plan for 47 less bins at the end. But that may change, so please don't quote me on 47 less. Thank you.
So that was 916 minus 47. Answers on the postcard. I think Councillor Cope was good at maths earlier. Councillor Wheeler.
Sorry, thank you, Leader. So part of my question related to something which has already been raised around heritage areas and what they look like and how they should look. So that point is covered. I'm a little bit confused about some of the figures, and I'm just trying to get back to where I had my working out. I'm also very slightly confused. So a lot of the dog bins were self-funding because they had advertising. So I'm assuming, obviously, that's not going to happen unless we are thinking of running advertising on our bins, which may well be an alternative revenue idea. Let's face it, we're looking desperate. So that's one thing, and whether or not that has been factored into the cost of removing the bins is something that I would like somebody to come back to me on. The other thing as well, just it's interesting to know a potential reduction in bins. People don't carry their rubbish very far, from my experience. So we have a lot of bins in our Sangs area, and if there isn't sort of within sight a bin, invariably the litter, unfortunately, in a lot of cases goes on the floor. So I would be a little bit worried about the reduction. I'm trying to get back to the right table. So the other thing as well, looking at the table, is that not all the bins have reached the 20-year life cycle stage. So what are we doing with those bins that we are replacing, which haven't yet reached end of life? Because it seems to me that while we're declaring a climate emergency, to be replacing something which is fit for purpose seems not to comply with the paper that we discussed a little bit earlier today. And also looking at the finances of the council, unless this is completely and utterly funded, I'm surprised that we're looking to invest in money in this when potentially it doesn't actually have to be done. The £410 is the pricing. I'm so sorry, I'm afraid I've lost my sight on where I am on the paper. I will come back on it, but there seems to be a discrepancy in the pricing of the bins as well between one line and another, but I can't find it, so I'll have to come back to you on it in terms of costs. But yeah, I'm delighted to hear that we will be consulted on hopefully the appearance and also the placing of the bin.
So I think there were 3 questions I got in there, Councillor Wheeler, before your subsequent ones you're going to maybe come back to, but maybe you could pick up on those.
I can. With the question, with the point regarding having a litter bin in sight, that will be a part of the rationalisation process of locations of bins. A lot of so we'll be making sure they're in the right locations. Also, a part of the ward member consultation process, I would hope that ward members who know their areas will be saying this is a regular walking route, it needs potentially an increase in capacity, or it doesn't need as many bins. I would hope that ward members are very clear in that. I don't think I share the negative view of people will just throw rubbish on the floor because they don't see a bin, but that's maybe personal experience. I would, with regards to the financing, this project's been financed out of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, so it's funding that's being provided to the council by the central government, which is where that funding has come from, so there's no drawdown on council money. I think what you're referring to, do correct me if I'm wrong, is just on page 44, Councillor Wheeler, with regards to the 410. So that's the cost of the installation of the new bin, and there's the removal of the old wooden bin, which is £100 each. Is that the part you're referring to? If not, please come back to me on when you find it.
I will have to come back to you on it. But the point that you've missed there is about the agenda that the agenda item that we've already spoken about, which is about climate change and reducing our carbon emissions, to replace bins that are serviceable and fit for purpose before end of life can't really be seen as supporting that agenda, in my opinion.
Well, as you will have heard Ms McCubbin state, the vast majority of the bins that we currently have, which has precipitated this report, are coming to nearly 40 years out of date. I fully appreciate that there are going to be some bins which are perfectly serviceable. I will take that away, and I would say that if those bins don't need to be replaced, then they can come out of the scheme. But that will be a discussion with officers to see how that fits into the wider replacement programme. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
In the report, sorry, can I just come back? In the report, there are 62 which are 20 plus years old, 410 which are between 1 and 10 years, and all the rest of them are newer. So I don't think it's really fair to say they've reached end of life.
Ms McCubbin, have you got a comment maybe on the life cycle of these bins? 'Cause I assume you have some kind of working stock where you roll them over time.
Absolutely, thank you. We're bins, I think the bins that are being referred to are the village bins, where they'll be replaced, the plaster bins will be replaced with the dual stream bins. We would absolutely reuse those bins and replace other bins with those bins in advance of purchasing a new bin. If okay, I'll just address a couple of the other questions that you asked. There is a discrepancy in the pricing in the report between on-street and green spaces, because the 121 Glasden bins have included the installation cost within that as well. So the pricing is slightly higher and not the 410, which is in the other report. We currently don't have any advertising on the dog waste bins anymore. So whilst that was in place in the beginning, it's expired now. So it isn't self-funding at all. There is no funding that we receive from that. Another point I'll just come back on very quickly is where we're taking bins away, it's only where there's duplication bins. So where there is a dog waste bin right next to a refuse bin. What we're not proposing to do is take away dog bins and replace them with nothing. The bins that are just dog bins by themselves will be replaced with a larger Glasden Plaza bin. And I think that may have covered your points. Thank you, and sorry.
Very good, thank you, Ms McCubbin. Councillor Wilson, then we're going to move on.
Thanks. Just a point about the new bins. We had one recently replaced in North Windlesham in advance of this project because the dog poo bin was broken. It was replaced within about 3 days of me reporting it, and there was immensely positive feedback from everyone who used it. So that I think our residents are really going to see a big difference when the dog poo bins are replaced by plaza bins. And on the point on climate change, the plaza bins got 2.5 times the capacity of the dog poo bin that it replaced. So presumably it will only need to be emptied less, 40% of the time that times that it was before. So that should save on carbon emissions and officers' time and things like that as well. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Nothing like brevity, thank you. Okay, very good. Thank you for the discussion. I think it's going to allow us to refresh things and hopefully lead to less issues. I have my own favourite dog poo bin and other overflowing bins, but let's not go into that in further detail. So the executive is advised to resolve that 156,920 is the subject of a capital bid to be included in the 2024-25 capital programme, and any changes to the delivery programme be delegated to the Strategic Director for Environment, Community and Portfolio Holder for Net Zero Wellbeing and the Environment, and the Portfolio Holder for Leisure and Culture in consultation with the ward councillors. Are we so agreed? Agreed, thank you. Okay, so we move on now to item 8, which is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund Year 3 project allocation. I think that's you, Cal, thank you. Lost my place there, thank you for picking that up.
Surrey Heath Borough Council are currently receiving a grant payment from government called the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. The fund is split into 3 years, with the vast majority of our funding being made available next year. The report in front of you is broadly split into 2 sections. The first section provides an update on the delivery of projects within the current financial year. Executive have been asked to note the progress made on these this evening. To summarise, all projects are on track for completion within the required timescales, and excellent outcomes are being met across all projects that have commenced. There are a few projects where delivery is yet to commence, however these are being progressed by officers and will start soon. The second part of the report looks ahead to the next financial year, which is year 3 of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. As mentioned, this is where Surrey Heath will receive the majority of the funding, and we have approximately £880,000 available. It's recommended that the Executive agree that the project themes and associated budgets outlined in Appendix B are approved. This will enable officers to develop a full project proposal, and these are to be agreed at the Executive in December of this year. It will also allow officers to work alongside the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities and the Surrey Heath Partnership to agree funding based on these themes. For information, the Surrey Heath Partnership is the local partnership group, and they are also required to agree the projects as part of the funding conditions. This is a government grant, and we're also required to progress this through the budget setting process, which will be complete over the coming months. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Phelan-Cook. Any questions? Councillor White, please. Thank you.
Page 59, the Annex A UK Shared Prosperity Fund Year 2 update. Year 2, improvements to Albert Road Playground Bagshot, tenders being drafted. Is that going to go out to public consultation for the residents of that area?
Playgrounds, we always put playgrounds out to public consultation for the design of those playgrounds, Councillor White. Don't worry.
Very good. Any other questions? No, I just had a small technical one, which is the paper, I think, refers to year 1 and 2, although the agenda refers to year 3. And I think, to be honest, most of the action is in year 3. So I don't know whether we can just get the title of the paper updated in case anybody comes back in 5 years' time and wants to see what we've decided, so they can follow the audit trail. Is that okay? Is that fair enough? Thank you. Good. So if there's no other questions or comments, thank you very much for the work on this. And sorry, I forgot to mention it in terms of the work on the bins as well. But thanks very much for the work on this. The executive is advised to resolve that the progress made on Year 2 projects funded through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, as set out at Annex B, be noted. Officers develop project plans for Year 3 in line with the priorities outlined in Annex B to this report. Officers work alongside the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities and the Surrey Heath Partnership to agree funding based on the priorities outlined in Annex B. And a further report be brought to the Executive in December 2023 to approve final project recommendations. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay. I don't see any sign. I don't see any signs he's going to make it, but we may as well move on to community fund. We'll come to the others together just in case. Okay, so we'll move on to item 10. Because I have problems with comms in this building, I'm not sure whether Councillor McIntyre will make it back or not for some of the items, so we'll give her a chance. Community fund grants, probably not the biggest decision that's going to be made in this building this year. And I guess this one would have been with Councillor Phelan-Cook, who's unfortunately not able to join us today. So I will take the lead on this one. So there is a request for funding for this Halloween Bagshot Big Bash. It feels to be in line with the scope for these types of grants. The write-up as in the paper. Has anybody got any questions or issues or concerns? Take Councillor Quinn first.
Following the publicity of last week, I think we're all aware of the scary and spooky state of the finances left by the Conservatives in Surrey Heath. But does the leader really think that 1,500 for an event described as the Bagshot Halloween Big Bash is a good idea? And can the leader reassure me that if this money is granted, none of it will be used to subsidise alcohol, as I think that would be an inappropriate use of our funds? Thank you.
Would the officer like to comment on the last point around the Councillor France? On the alcohol, I'll come back to the first point. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, sorry, I was just getting my camera to switch on. Yes, happy to come back on that. The application is not for alcohol. My understanding that is this is a family event, and that there won't be alcohol available as part of the association's plans.
Thank you very much. first of all, I'd like to commend the councillor for his question, nicely put. In terms of this particular fund, from memory, it's ring fence for these types of events, and therefore it's appropriate until we change the structure, if we change the structure of those, that we honour that. And it's in line with the scope. So on the face of it, there is no reason not to support something like this in Bagshot for the benefit of the community and for the local businesses as set out in the paper. Councillor White.
I can confirm it is just trick-or-treating and it is purely an event for the children in the area. But 2.2, you've got that an application has been made to Windlesham Parish Council for £1,000 to cover provision of street trading licence. Street trading licence doesn't cost £1,000. It's a road closure order that costs that much. So that's just a point in that.
Noted. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah. Any other questions on this? No. Okay. I think in all transparency, we have asked the officers to look at the policy around these particular grants to see how best we manage them going forward. But this is very much in scope at this point in time, and therefore I'll put it forward to the executive for approval. So the executive is advised to resolve up to £1,500 to be awarded to Bagshot Business Association to support the annual Halloween Bagshot Big Bash event. Are we so agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much, and thank you to Ms. France. If we move on now to the Armed Forces Covenant. Again, this would have been jointly supported, I think, by Councillor Feenan-Cook, that's not able to join us, and Councillor McIntyre in her role as Armed Forces Champion. But in the absence of both, I shall step into the breach, no pun intended. I think we're all aware of the context of this. I would be very surprised if any of the members here present, and indeed others remote, or even our visitors and the officers themselves, don't know military veterans if they go one or two circles beyond their immediate families or friendship groups. So it's very much in line with the philosophy of this administration to support this. It details it quite nicely in the paper, what we're looking to approve, and I would be open to any questions or comments from anybody in relation to this one. Good. I'm going to take that as universal support. Would that be fair, colleagues? Yeah, great. So I'd like to just note that whilst it's not procedurally appropriate, we'll just note that there was universal support for this measure amongst the wider group. And the executive is advised to resolve that the covenant pledges be agreed and adopted as set out in paragraph 3.1 of this report, and a formal signing ceremony be arranged to take place by the end of the financial year, and an appropriate and agreed date with members of the council and armed forces representatives in attendance. Are we so agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much, everybody, for your support with that. Much appreciated. Yeah, and Jean, yeah. So we'll move on to the Treasury Management Report. I find myself in the position of having to deal with Treasury now twice on the trot, so that's gone on the notebook. The Treasury report obviously is I think is a requirement. This comes back from the accounting body, isn't it? That is good practice. So very happy to endorse that. Was there any questions on the Treasury report for Q1 2023? which means it's an excellent report. If there's no questions, it means it's answered all your points. It's comprehensive in its detail, so well done to the officers involved. And maybe you could pass that on, Mr. Watson. So if there's no questions or comments, or going once, going twice, okay, then we'll move on. So the executive is advised to resolve that the Treasury Management Report for the period 1st of April to the 30th of June 2023 be noted. Are we so agreed? Thank you. Okay, I think we now go into closed session. Do we read these the right way around or not?
If members want to discuss any of
If they want to discuss any of them. Okay. So we move on to item 13, the write-off of irrecoverable bad debts. Maybe just as a point of order, if anybody does want to get into the detail of anything in specific, then we will need to go into closed session. So maybe I'll just take a view of that now. Or whether the questions will be more generic.
I have a question related to a specific company. Sorry.
Right.
I have a question that relates to a specific company. I cannot mention it, but it's probably going to be a bit.
So should we go into closed session?
I was just for, yeah.
Right, okay.
Just for safety.
Thank you to our visitors. Have a nice evening. Our visitor, sorry. And I think we're good to go. Are we going to come off the public stream? Yeah. Okay, where's the magic words? Thank you. Apparently it's not legal if I don't read them. So we better read them. Right. The executive is advised to resolve that under Regulation 4 of the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England Regulation of 2012, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the ground that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act as set out below. Information related to any individual and information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Are we